USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and Auto Camp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
OMG, yes.
It's an absolute riot.
Woo!
And the only movie that can be described as
So much weirder than the last time. What last time?
it's the frequel
You ready?
we've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays.
What deeply out-of-touch old person came up with that?
You did.
Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised.
Cavalry Audio.
All right, let me start. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Hello, Cavalry Plus subscribers. You are listening to the first episode of bonus content for the Murder Chronicles. I'm the producer of the show, Branden Morgan, and I'm here with our host and writer, Carolyn Osorio. Hello, Carolyn.
Hi, Branden.
Thanks for making time. So this is our first foray into this bonus content business. So let's make sure that that we give the people who are kind enough to subscribe their money's worth. So what I wanted to do was really kind of make this about you and your process and kind of give people, like pull back the curtain a little bit to let them know how a professional true crime podcaster actually gets things done. The mistakes, the obstacles, the small victories, and ultimately, what your goal is for this. And I think people know by now, if people have subscribed to Cavalry Plus because of you and your work, they're familiar with Shadow Girls, and so they know that you're not the run-of-the-mill true crime podcaster, okay? That you have advocacy on your mind and that you have victims' rights on your mind. And that's what I think sets you apart, and that's why I'm really stoked to be working with you, and that's kind of what I want to get into with this whole bonus content, and specifically starting off with this episode with Toxic. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, that's great. And I really, I think we also talked about we wanted to have more of a kind of casual vibe of it. So I hope that people, as they listen, we take the episodes so incredibly seriously. And so this is an opportunity for us to, kind of talk about our process. And when we put the episodes together, it's a lot of conversation and dialogue goes in. And, so this will be a more casual conversation. So don't judge us for it.
Yeah, I have no geez. Casual isn't something that I have to kind of strive for. I'm maybe a little bit too
But I mean, that's what I love about you. You have a very New York sense of humor, but you're also incredibly, and I think that sometimes, that's a lost art where you can be both like gregarious and funny and not take yourself too seriously, but then also on point when you need to. And I think that that's a really great dynamic. And why we work well together, because I take myself way too seriously sometimes.
Yeah, well, not when I'm around, damn it. Okay. So
that's why I had our disclaimer up top.
Yes. Yeah. Well, listen, and I like that. And I think that's something that's going to work with the bonus content, is that they'll see a different side of you, right? That you're not just this, social justice kind of person making sure that stories are told and that voices are heard that normally are drowned out, that you also have a side that's less buttoned up. You let your hair down and you can talk about stuff and the frustrations that go into it and the fun that we have. And I think it'll be I think this will be good. But I want to jump into this right now. And the first question that I want to ask, well, there's actually two, but I'll start with one. You mentioned early at the top of the episode that you'd covered this material before and you didn't feel like you did it justice. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so let me kind of walk listeners through how I came to this case, which is through a law enforcement source who has become a friend. And I sat down with them and he told me about this case and I'd never heard of it, and being, a local from the Pacific Northwest, which I pride myself on. And a lot of the reason why I cover a lot of cases here is because I have such a connection to this place. So I'd never heard about the Deborah Swiger story. And the next step in that process would be to do a public disclosure request for any information related to the case. And that is what led me to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office in King County. And what they do, and those people, I always have to give them credit because these records folks, that's way too simplistic of a term for them. They do amazing work. They basically make sure that all the information that people request is redacted to protect the privacy of children and innocents. And it's a lot of information to go through for them. And it's a thankless job, but I really appreciate them. So let me just say that. So you make an appointment, and this was during the pandemic. So it was like, this is like the first time I'd been out, and the streets of Seattle were completely like I was the only one walking around. So they let me come in, which was amazing. And it's a room and there's like 10 or 12 boxes and it smells like the 80s. Like it's got that, that old library smell. And so it
smells like neon and cocaine.
It doesn't smell like Teen Spirit. Okay. It smells like an old librarian.
Okay.
But so anyway, a records person has to stay there with you the entire time, which is a little bit weird. And you just start going through it. You start going through the boxes. You start and it's like it has everything from, because this case was adjudicated and went through a trial, and then it has all the newspaper articles because they keep that kind of stuff and they put that in a file. And it just has, I could have been there for days and I was there probably a full day. But as I got through, I really didn't feel like I knew Deborah. Like I had my own feelings of what I thought her motivations were based on, being the age that I am and, all that. But I didn't know. I felt like I wasn't, and that was the part that I didn't feel that I did her justice, is that, so I reached out to her friend and I figured she's going to know everything about her. They were besties. They were business partners. She's going to know the good and she's going to know the bad, and so I reached out to her and she thought about it. And I have a mindset of, when I went into doing a true crime podcast, I wasn't going to be shoving microphones in people's faces that I didn't want to. And I wanted to basically throw it out there with some people and wait for them to kind of get back to me because, some people, this is like the worst thing that's ever happened to them. They don't want to talk about it. And I respect that, I really, really do.
As you should. The soft sell usually works better.
Well, it's not, it's a mindset of like, I want people who want to come and I want to be their advocates. You talked about advocacy. Mm-hmm. And when people come to you and ask for your help, it's like it's not an ego trip, but it's like, you have to be kind of an egomaniac to think that what you're doing is going to help them, and that what you're doing is going to, bring attention to their case and to do it really well and to take the time to do it. Because a lot of people, they just don't have time for people.
It's a responsibility.
It's a heavy responsibility. I feel like it's a very heavy responsibility because when I take on something, I want to do it well. And sometimes you can't do it as well as you would like. And that's basically full circle how I felt in this case was that despite all the research that I did on a on a case that it wasn't cold, it was solved, but on a case that was like, happened in the 80s, like, even though I had all this information, I didn't feel like I knew the victim. So she wasn't ready to give an interview. Her, I think I referred to her as Jane in the podcast.
Yeah.
She said, let me think about it. And I could tell that she seriously, it's funny how you can tell what people think by like one sentence. And so I really thought maybe, and it didn't materialize. And so then when we were going to do the Murder Chronicles, fast forward, 2 years later, and I just decided, you know what? This is the case that I'm going to start this episode off because it's such an important case. We talk about domestic violence, we talk about toxic masculinity, we talk about a lot of gaslighting. And this case is so like, you would have never known that this guy was doing this for, like he wasn't in your face about it, but he was like in her face, and she thought she could handle it. And you and I talked about this before. And you said, I said, we were referring to somebody else, but you were like, well, why were you doing this with this person? And I'm like, Branden, I thought I could handle it. And it wasn't anywhere near what that was.
Yeah.
But how we think that we can handle people and how wrong we can be.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
It's summer. Time to enjoy long days, lazy nights, and great food. Because Uber Eats has deals all summer long. So, when hunger strikes, don't sweat it. Delicious deals are just a tap away on Uber Eats. Enjoy all your favorite grocery items delivered straight to you. Get ice cream, soda, and snacks from your favorite stores like Wegmans and CVS and make the most of every moment. Now that sounds like a good summer. Order now on Uber Eats. Terms apply. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Well, that brings me to something that I'll bring up later, but I'm gonna go in with a hot take later on that might piss you off, but it's okay. What I want to talk about first is, how did you get Jane? Did you just leave it alone and she came back to you, or did you make another overture to get her story?
Well, I told the story without her based on all the research that I did. And then when we were going to do the Murder Chronicles, and I was like, this is the first case. I feel like I want to see. And I just reached out to her again. I messaged her and I just said, hey, I want to revisit this episode. I feel like I didn't get Deborah the way I wanted to. And it was instantaneously. She didn't even say, she just like, yeah, I can do it. And we made the appointment. And then when I was talking to her on the phone, we first started out, she's like, yeah, I listened to the episode. This was in a different podcast that I was doing, a Pacific Northwest podcast. And it was like, it meant the world to me, because this is the mana. It's like when you tell a story and the people involved in the story really feel like you got it, and they trust you, then I mean, that's everything to me. So,
what do you think about, hold on, let me ask you something. What do you think about Jane's reliability as a narrator, given her, because I just like to put things through a filter of myself, right? Like for me. And if something horrible like this happened to my best friend and someone called me for an interview, I don't know if I would be able to give really an unbiased opinion of my best friend that something bad happened to, right? So the sound bites that you got from Jane and the interview you got from Jane were amazing and were heartfelt and were tragic and were sad and we're really pro Jane. I mean, sorry, we're pro Debbie, right? Whereas Debbie as a person, you got to admit, and this is the hot take that might piss you off, had a lot of flaws. Okay. And the reason that she thought she could handle this fucking maniac, Bill, was because as a married woman, okay, she admits to having several extramarital affairs that, to use your words, ended a little crunchy. Okay. So, and listen, I'm the last person to victim blame here, and I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is, how much of this, I don't want to put any blame onto Debbie, but the fact that she thought she could handle this guy was because she'd been in bad extramarital relationships before. Okay. So how much of it was a world that she created, and how much of it was this the proclivities of this lunatic Bill? Right. And let's just be honest about it. If I'm an asshole, I'm an asshole. It's fine.
No. I mean, I think that you can't think about a case like this and not think about those things. That's why we all are interested in unpeeling that onion or the layers and trying to figure out like why do people do what they do?
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like men have affairs all the time, especially back in the 80s. And, so what?
I totally agree.
I'm not going to judge her because, and I think that's another thing that pissed me off, is that she was like all of these newspaper articles, and that was what was getting me going as well. It's not just that when I say that I didn't feel like I got to know her, it was also like I was pissed off that even in these newspaper reports, she was the nothing. Like Bill was like, this guy, why did he do this? He was pushed to the, everybody wanted to make not everybody, but from what Jane had said, there was a lot of people coming to his defense. And then you have this huge personality with Larry Sturholm, wrong place, wrong time, blah, blah, blah. Actually, don't put in blah, blah, blah. That sounds horrible. I'm just saying but like Debbie was like an amazing woman. She was, I could see her working her ass off in that, as an emergency room nurse and taking names and whatever that saying is, like just being awesome. And then she had this entrepreneurial spirit in the 80s. I mean, if you think about, women weren't even allowed, in quotes, to get credit cards without their husbands until like 70s. And that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg allowed us to have our own credit card, right? So I just felt angry on so many levels, just about like, so what that she had these affairs,
No, I completely agree with you. What I'm saying is that despite, like, all things being equal, completely even playing field between men and women, which is pie in the sky, I know. And that's not to say that men who have extramarital affairs all the time don't get themselves in fucked up situations, because that happens also, right? Because that happens also. And so we should have a really clear eye on that as well. But taking all of that into consideration, the fact that her lifestyle choices, to say that her lifestyle didn't contribute to it, I think is a little too woke even for me, right? I mean, and again, I'll take the hit for that if it's what it is. But I mean, because then I got some advice when I was a younger man from my brother, who said, don't date a woman who would leave another person for you, because you could probably be next. Right. Okay. So, and that's cool. That's brotherly advice. And I get it. And I mostly followed it. And so, and listening to the episode, because when things started getting weird with Bill, she meets Larry. Okay. And so then another lifestyle choice that she makes winds up really bad for someone else also, so it's just, and gosh, look, obviously someone's behavior, regardless of what it is, doesn't deserve what happened to her. But I also want to be able to really look at it objectively and see the world that she kind of created for herself that might have opened some doors that otherwise would have stayed closed.
I think sometimes, and I think this is why I relate to her too, it's like we're a product of who we are. All of our, the different layers of like how we grew up, what opportunities did we have? And I think that Jane painted and I totally understood what Jane was saying about Deborah only saw herself by her looks. And I think that hit me so hard, because, as a woman, that's how we've been judged for so long. And I'm so happy that it's changing. It's like slow, but it's like Deborah, in my mind,
self-worth. I'm sorry. So her self-worth was directly correlated to the men that found her attractive.
Right. And not only that, but it's like, there's that high, when there's the high, people are addicted to highs. I know I am addicted to highs in different ways, not with, having multiple partners, but in other ways. And so sometimes, it's not necessarily, whatever high you choose, it feels like that's kind of what it was, that kind of behavior of like
excitement of a new relationship.
Right.
Right.
When you go down and then you need something to go back up, and then you go down and then you need something back up. So, I mean, I just feel like it's an extreme example of something that's relatable to most of us who have those, you want that high, and whatever that is, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's TV, whatever it is,
right.
You're obsessed with just, watching different, whatever. We all have our own obsession.
Yeah. Work. Seeing your
Yes.
kids succeed in something is a wonderful high. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if we're honest with ourselves, then what she did, you know what? I mean, it's not something I would necessarily do, but I think that sometimes you get yourself into situations where you don't plan for it to happen that way.
Right. What I'm saying is to your point here, what I'm trying to say, and thank you for leading me here, maybe without knowing you were doing it, that high.
Give me some credit.
Right. That high. Right.
Yeah.
Let's say that that's what it was. The high, like you're saying that she, her looks were, one of the driving factors of her life. What men are attracted to me. Right. Several affairs. If her high was something else, if her high was working out, okay, chances are this thing wouldn't have happened to her. Right. Like if she was chasing a different high that got her out of bed every day, other than I want to experience that wonderful, intoxicating feeling of new romance. Okay. Over and over and over again. Right. I miss that too. I've been with my wife for 22 years. Okay. And so it's different now. It's the day to day. And we find ways to recreate that early magic, but you work at it, but that's what a marriage is, And so that's what I'm saying. If she was able to get that kind of fulfillment somewhere else, I think maybe things might have turned out differently for her, but we are who we are.
Well, yeah. And I think that, you and I remember a conversation, and this is about the highs, like we've had where it was during a point where you were overwhelmed with a bunch of your work. You had a bunch of stuff on your plate. And I was like worried about you, thinking, man, he's got and I've got to add more to it. So get that other stuff off the table. Get that other stuff off the table. Get me back in front and center. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, and then you said something to me like, no, this is what I love. And the way that you said it, I knew exactly what you meant. Like, this is what I love. This is what I love. Like, you love this work. You love being insane and having one thing after another, and then like having projects go through, and I just think that depending on whatever that is, sometimes it can be really positive, but it's also, this was something that she was getting her self-worth, and that's really powerful. And I think that
and almost impossible to walk away from.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which leads me to my next thing.
Okay.
So a complete fucking jealous, murderous maniac like Bill doesn't happen like overnight, in my experience. Okay. Was there evidence of this behavior in his previous marriages or relationships that you were aware of?
That was the weird thing, is that you would think that that's true. But according to what I went through and researching all those documents, was that he'd had 2 divorces before. There wasn't, I think that maybe it was a combination of, he was middle-aged and he had retired, and, he wasn't in control of, he wasn't the big shot anymore. He was a captain of a nuclear submarine at one point. He went to a prestigious business school. Like, I feel like he, and then I think he had like a couple of kids that were in college. And so he was living in this like probably crappy apartment. And, here she is having this huge success. And that was another thing. He was jealous of her success. She's sitting here rocking it with having these properties. in the 80s when women, there's not a lot of other women who are entrepreneurs because of just the fact that they can, there's just, we haven't evolved there yet. Right.
Right.
And, she's a trailblazer. And that was another thing that I just loved about her and wanted her to get credit for. And so I think that, I'm obviously not a psychiatrist, but I feel like whenever there are issues coming up in triggers, I guess is what you would call it, where it's like, he's with this young, beautiful woman. He wants to possess her. He doesn't have a lot going on in his life. He's being triggered. If he has financial pressures, these are all very common triggers for people to, do things that they would probably regret later. Right.
Have you ever had that kind of, not like where you feel like you want to murder somebody? Well, maybe you feel like you want to murder somebody, but that jealous kind of like, right, about someone that you were dating. Have you ever like driven to their house in the middle of the night because you don't trust that maybe someone's car's there?
I was really fortunate. You've talked about you've been with your wife forever. I've been with my husband since I was 20. And so I had an opportunity once. There was a situation where, and I'm not going to go into this huge long story, but bottom line is my husband, my then boyfriend, we'd had this argument. My husband was my boyfriend, and he was like this being a complete asshole, which he will absolutely agree to. And we were on our way to a Lollapalooza concert with like a bunch of friends, and something happened where we got pulled over, and I was just a passenger. So I was like, and then right at that time, it just was like the weirdest thing where my ex-boyfriend, the one that had broken up with me prior to me dating my husband, he saw me and he was like, come with me if you want to live. No, he was like,
Terminator 2 reference.
He was like, come, Carolyn, come. And I was like, absolutely. I freaking love this guy. This was the type of guy where it was like, I would hold on to the motorcycle when we were riding and he would go like 120 miles an hour. And I would just be like, I don't care. Right. And for whatever reason, so I went and grabbed my backpack and I was ready to go. And I had, and I just was like, wait a second. I actually didn't want that kind of crazy fucking relationship. I wanted to be with my husband or my boyfriend who was having a bad day. And there was a bunch of other reasons, but I remember being smart enough to make that choice of being like, I don't want crazy. I don't want this, because it doesn't bring out the best in me, I don't want to be that jealous, like freaker, you know?
Because it's not a good feeling. It happened to me once before the girl I met before my wife, the girl I was dating before I met my wife. And I'm not a jealous guy, just not, it's just not how it is. And we were on the phone and, it's so fucking stupid. We're on the phone and she lived in Beverly Hills. I was in Hollywood. So it's like, depending on what time of day, it's like a 15 or 20-minute drive. Right. And I hear a guy's voice in the background, right? Like really, really quick. And I went, who was that? She goes, who was what? I was like, the guy I just heard. She goes, what? I don't even know what you're doing. Who? Right. And I was like, am I a lunatic? Like, what the hell is going on? And so in a second, I go into this jealous kind of spiral. And I get off the phone and I'm walking around my apartment. I don't know what the fuck is going on. And I get in the car and I drive to, I don't even tell her. I drive to her house where she's living. And I'm sitting in front of, on the street and it's driving me insane. And I go up and I knock on her door because I don't trust all of a sudden, because I know what I heard. And it turns out what I heard was she had an alarm set on an old school clock radio, right? To wake her up in case she fell asleep studying. Okay. And she inadvertently, when it went off, and it was like the DJ's voice that I heard, and she just reached over and hit it off. And it made perfect sense because I knew I recognized the voice, but I couldn't place it because it was a fucking DJ on a 3-second alarm clock radio that she turned off, to the point where she didn't even know what I was talking about, what voice I'd hear, because it was just such a natural thing for her to turn the thing off. And so, but that like that put me into therapy. Like it scared me about myself, like how I felt, the way that I reacted, because I'd always thought that jealous people have deeper, like personal problems or insecurity issues or whatever. And so I really needed to examine if I was dealing with any of that. And it turns out that I was, and I got over it and I'm able to have a great relationship with my wife.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo coffee machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
It's Wednesday, Adams. I see you're trying to distract yourself from your own banal thoughts. Let me help. Here's a recording thing made of my latest root canal.
Wednesday, Season 2, begins August 6th, only on Netflix.
But see, here's what I love about that story, Branden. Here's what I love is that when you are lucky enough or make the right choices, I mean, you don't become this other person. That's why I never put myself above Deborah or whatever, because, I made the right choice that day. It could have gone something totally different.
Right.
And my life would be completely different. I'm the same person. And so it's like, we're complicated people. I absolutely believe that, if you wouldn't have gone through therapy and you would have kept like going crazy after this girl, like you never know what you would be capable of doing.
Sure.
Right.
Of course. It's choices that we make at different times in our lives. Right. And so my kind of broadside against Debbie earlier in this conversation wasn't in any way to shame any decisions that she made. Right. A grown woman, consenting adults, do whatever you want, and that's fine. Okay. What I'm saying is that those choices that we make, her thinking she could handle this guy, and saying that right there is very telling. Oh, I can handle it. That's acknowledging that there's something fucked up, right? Or what else? There's nothing to handle if everything's okay. She's like, oh, I can handle it. She knew that something was going on, and maybe it was like, the old Carolyn, where I like going 120 with my hair on fire on the back of a motorcycle, and consequences be damned, right? Yeah. She was experiencing that. Oh, it's kind of sexy, or maybe I don't know.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Why else would she do it?
Right.
I mean, she wanted that.
Because if it validates this guy driving 3.5 hours unannounced, she's like, he's fucking into me. Yeah, it feels good.
I think it turned so quick that it's like, and how many times have you really get to know a person?
Right.
Right.
Whew. Wow. So poor James, the stylist. Let's talk about James, her real estate partner.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that all about?
I don't think they were having an affair. According to the police documents that I read, he was her stylist, and they were friends, and they were like, you could hear the conversation rolling out while he's doing her hair. Like, hey, I love real estate. Yeah, me too.
I've got some money. Yeah, I've got some money. Okay, let's pool our resources. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally think that he was just, again, like she could have relationships with men that weren't sexual. And I think that's one of them.
Yeah. And so the Larry situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So tell us who Larry was.
To be honest with you, he was married for decades to the same woman. And I think that they probably met, and this is like my anecdotal thing, but I think they were just both drawn to each other like moths to a flame, like completely outgoing, like super witty, and just like, rip. When you have that attraction with someone, and he was in a place where he, who knows what was going on with him? He was obviously retiring from his popular Larry at Large segment, and he was taking on a new thing. And, I know that they really tried to kind of downplay. It sounds like when I was talking to Jane, and, because he had a wife who loved him and had no idea that he was dropping, she was dropping him off at the airport and he's going out the back door and getting a rental car. I mean, how crunchy is that? And it's like, and everybody was really like during the trial, like they didn't want to acknowledge that it was an affair, because then she, not only did she lose her husband, but then it's like, it was very complicated. Here's this person who's built this reputation of being an award-winning journalist and a really good guy. And it just sounds like, he made his choices too. Unfortunately, who knew that Bill was going to, who know what it's like, people who wife swap and all that stuff, right? Like, I don't judge people as long as, my motto is, if you're not hurting anybody, do what, that's not for me, but I definitely wouldn't. But it's like, of course you've got so many egos and everything involved. Like, how could you not think, few people could do that and not have sour grapes, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
of course, it's just, and so, oh man, it's just so brutal. It's so fucking brutal what happened.
It is. And his last meal, I mean, that was like, what the, knowing that you've made this decision. And that was the thing that got to me too. Like, when I was listening to his voice and I had to listen to those tapes, I was so angry. I was getting so angry at this guy. And I was like, I could see him leaning into his, putting himself forward as this upstanding citizen. And he was, and he couldn't fall back on that. I'm like, dude, you just murdered 2 people and stabbed them over 300 times. Like, are you really trying to act like you are the captain of a submarine and can like manage this? I mean,
no way.
Right?
Oh gosh. And so it's weird. Like, it's all not fun, but it's interesting talking about the personalities and the decisions that we make and the different type of relationships and stuff. But it's such a cold water bucket over your head when you remember how it ends, right? And then it's like, oh Christ.
Yeah, and I don't
the real human cost,
Yeah, I mean, when she said, I thought that she thought that she could handle him. It's like, that's so true. Like, you were around in this time. Like, I mean, back then, like, what could she have done?
Nothing.
She couldn't have done anything.
Nothing. I remember.
And then dealing with the judgment of people. If she's like, this is an affair, it's another one, like,
right. It's an affair. And then, that guy was the next affair from this affair. And so,
right. She would have been judged, and she would not have wanted people to know her business. And she wanted to put herself forward as a, as she was, which was, starting this amazing business that was, really successful. I mean, I just feel like she was in a really tough spot,
Yeah.
And then, I mean, gosh, Branden, look at what happened, what she wrote to her daughter, Jenny. If that doesn't show you her moral character and fortitude, like, her last thought is of her little girl.
Yep.
I mean, every time I think about that makes me cry.
Yeah, it's brutal. This whole thing is brutal. I mean,
I know.
Say whatever you want about sexual proclivities or infidelities or whatever. It doesn't mean get brutally murdered. Like, that punishment doesn't fit the, perceived crime at all. And I don't think anybody thinks that. If they do, then they got their own fucking problems. But it's just these circumstances and the steps and the things that had to fall into place for this. Like, one of a different podcast that I did, I remember, it was about this terrible murder, suicide, and I was able to distill the story down to like one moment, one decision that this kid made that would have changed his whole life if he had almost literally gone right instead of left at this one moment, right? But we don't realize those moments most of the time while they're happening, right? You got to kind of work backwards. And with with Debbie, like, what could the moment have been in her life? Like, was it something when she was 7 years old and her dad said something stupid, right? That instilled in her, well, I better look good or men aren't going to love me, right? That's something I worry about with my daughters all the time. Am I completely fucking them up with bad parenting choices? I don't know. Nobody really knows, right?
Well, and it's not even just the thing. That's the thing. It's not even just your parenting choices. It's also just society. And I'm so grateful that it's evolving because, you know, I obviously have daughters and you know, it's if you look at the messaging that's out there, it's changing. But, you know, I mean, I talked about this in the Shadow Girls. The messaging that girls get has got to change, and it is. And I think that the messaging that Deborah got is real clear. You know, she got her power, some of her power, out of and you know what? It is great to get that attention.
Yeah,
you know?
Of course.
Because back in the day, that's if you got that, you know, you could be going places, and if you didn't, you know, you weren't going places, right? So it's like it's a very complicated stew. It's not just one thing. Like, oh, well, if her dad would have said I loved you, she wouldn't have turned out like that. That's not it. It's so much deeper. And just having these conversations, I think, is really important. And you know, and I think that's, you know, Jane coming forward was why she came forward, for the little girls out there, for her daughters, for her, what she experienced, for what she had, you know, saw happening. And you could tell that she was frustrated with her friend. Like, you don't have to do this. You know, she's a tough New York woman. And, you know, and yet she stood by her friend, you know, and I really appreciate
I think that's what's important.
Yeah. I mean, which tells me that Debbie had a lot going for her, that she had a friend like Jane who was like, hey, I want to be in business with you. I want to, you know, grow this business and grow our friendship and be in this together. And even though I wish you wouldn't do this, I still love you and I still want to help you through it, you know? And I think that that's something that is worth noting in this case. Unfortunately, you know, at the end of the day, you know, she couldn't, you know, it didn't change it, but I do think she had a good friend in Jane.
Well, listen, let's wrap this up. This was really, really terrific. I think this bonus content stuff is going to work. So
are we still recording?
Yeah, we're recording. That's fine. People can hear this. It's fine. So I look forward to, I'm reluctantly looking forward to the next episode, Paradise Lost. That one's a tough one for me.
I knew it would be because of your daughter.
Yeah, really tough one for me. But I will look forward to another lively conversation about that one next week. So we will say goodbye for now, but I wanted to thank everybody for subscribing to Cavalry Plus, and any questions or comments or recommendations for future episodes, please email at themurderchronicles@cavalrymedia.com. And Carolyn, do you have a Instagram that people can go to?
I do, but it's like from my cooking stuff. It's like Pippi Mama, which
Well, we'll get you a new one, and we'll start building that. And anything you want to add before we sign off?
I can't think of anything. Is there anything you think I should add?
I don't.
I feel like I talked a lot. I feel like
you did. It was terrific. It flew past. We're 40 minutes in here.
I know. We can never just have a real quick conversation.
I know. It's flown by. So make sure you follow the Murder Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to Cavalry Plus in the Apple Podcasts app, and stay tuned. Thank you very much for listening.
The Murder Chronicles is a Cavalry audio production recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Branden Morgan and myself. Our executive producers are Dana Brunetti and Keegan Rosenberger. Josh Windish edited and mixed this episode. Music by Soundstripe. For Cavalry Audio, I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host. Thanks for listening.